Hello and welcome to Sacred Democracy. I'm Maddi Cheers, and today's topic is sacred transformation. And I'm so pleased to welcome my guest, Paula Jennings, one of my very dear friends with a remarkable story, which is titled for today, From Woman of Wall Street to Woman of Wonder. And this concept of transformation is very important right now. People are calling for change. But when Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world, that really can be translated even from his own speeches, even from his own writings, as you cannot change the world until you change yourself. So if you want to transform anything, start with you. And that's why I was so pleased that Paula could join us today to tell us her remarkable story. So welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Maddi. I am so delighted and honored to be here with you. You certainly have played a part in my transformation. So thank you for that. And yeah, I agree with you. These times call for something different than we've done before. They call for us to connect in with ourselves in ways that perhaps, our busy lives had us avoid. I was forced to do this, I've gone through several transformations in my life. So circumstances arose where I was forced to do this a number of times. And this time is no different. It's like we are being asked to get quiet, to listen, and to build a loving relationship with ourselves, which I think forms the basis of our transformation. To love ourselves, as we were talking a little bit earlier, to love ourselves is the first step in being able to love others. To create peace within ourselves is the first step to, in fact, it's not even possible, right? It's not even possible to create that, to be that change for peace, for unity, for humanity coming together without cultivating it on the inside. And I do believe that your inner reality creates your outer reality.
Absolutely. So when you made this gigantic change, we do want to hear your story. People are very excited. Thank you, Melissa Goodblanket, for watching and giving you some hearts there, Paula.
Thank you, Melissa.
Your story is fascinating, I think, to everybody, because it really speaks to a lot of the shifting we're looking at doing in the world, creating in the world something that is more sustainable and more just. So we're all ready to hear your story.
Okay, I'm sort of like, where do I go all the way back? Let me start with the biggest transformation was when I left Ireland to come to the United States. And then I'll get into my career, and then I'll go a little bit into that major leap, which is the one we want to talk about, which is the Wall Street. But just a tiny little preamble to say that in my 20s, I suffered from an illness that really it forced me, as I'd mentioned, to really go into the depths of my psyche. And I lost several years of my 20s to it. And I came out of it with this burning passion for life, for this burning passion to live my life. And I think when you're taken, and many of us are, even in this situation, we're losing our lost ones. And many of us are feeling that, many people are feeling that hopelessness. So in that place, what got me out of it was the love of my family, was the love of my friends. And in some ways, I almost created it, maybe because I needed that validation. And so through that process, through that pain and suffering, which I honor, emerged somebody new. And this person who had emerged was ready to to leave Ireland. I felt like it was my mission, it was my responsibility to kind of take what I had learned and to come to try it somewhere else. But also, I think even more importantly, is to be witnessed going through that by the people you love. Sometimes you need to take yourself out of the situation. At least that was true for me, in order to start to embody the person that emerged. So that transformation process. And so it took me to the United States. It was purely a guided adventure. I had no idea that that's what I would end up. I never ever really wanted to move to New York, but it was very clear that that's what I was going to do. I bought a one-way ticket. I had about
Wow.
500 bucks in my pocket. My dad drove me to the airport. We both cried. And when I arrived here, you know, I was still sort of recovering from my illness, but also ready to go on with life. And literally through my mother was an incredible woman. She literally, you know, she would fill out the job applications for all of us. She would fill out, you know, our driving license applications. She was really one of those women who kind of, I don't know how she did it all, but she called me one day and said there's an ad in the Irish Times. And so the ad was for people who had green cards, which I was lucky enough to have, and also finance degrees, etc. And I had that too. So it turned out I went into a company at the time that were on Park Avenue. Now, I was this girl from Ireland who really had not had much experience in the financial world. And there was no reason this guy should hire me, but something about our connection or something, he saw some potential in me, perhaps, that he was ready to hire me. So he hired me. I literally took a Excel course the weekend before and started. And I think, you know, some of the qualities, if I think back, was this willingness and this connection to life, this life force, this willingness to be open to support, this willingness to, this was like, I guess I gathered a family around me in that first job. They really, really were super supportive. Here I was, this Irish woman in New York who really didn't know anything. And one of the things it taught me is that you find good people wherever you go, and it's your responsibility to show up with a good heart, and then you will be met by that as well. And I certainly worked really, really hard, and from there basically worked for 25. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of my Wall Street career. It was completely by default. I could have easily ended up working in a bar, but that's where I was supposed to be. And so I think, you know, a lot of my success I attribute more to my ability to connect with people, my ability to have a fresh mind, an open mind, and my ability to, I guess, give it my all. And I think that that's part of what, you know, I want the message that I'd like to share today is that we all have the opportunity, no matter where we come from or what we do, to really show up as our full selves every day. It's a choice, and there are certainly days that I didn't want to, and perhaps I didn't. But, you know, I guess it was really important for me to in that stage of my journey, it was really important for me to kind of build back my confidence. It was really important because when you go through an illness like that, and even coming through COVID, I could liken it. We all have gone through sort of this place where we have
you had COVID. I think that's important.
Oh yeah, and I had COVID. Yeah, I did have COVID, and it's in some ways that, you know, getting over that first illness was a similar journey in the sense that, well, you recognize that living in every, you know, that if you live your life in every moment and you give gratitude for every moment you have, things come that you could never have dreamed of. Like, I would have never expected that that's where I ended up. And, but I can look back and understand that there was something that I was bringing there. You know, really the biggest gift Wall Street was for me was to be an advocate for women, to be a strong woman, to be a role model, to be, many times we had an 11 person management team, and I was the sole woman. I think at one point there was one other woman from Texas on there with me. And so I learned to navigate in a world of very analytical A-type personality men. And I think what was valuable for them to have me was that I brought a different perspective. And I think that that's an important point too in these times, is that the more we gather around with different perspectives and have people willing to listen and to use their voice. And for some reason, I didn't have any difficulty speaking up. I didn't have any difficulty using my voice. So, you know, at a certain point, I guess it was no longer for me, but I was stuck in that. It was stuck in that. And I was married, I had 2 children. And at this point, I didn't realize how, I guess, disassociated I had become, because even at a certain point, that environment started to be toxic for me. I started to not enjoy. I basically had put up masks. I kept on sort of putting masks on every day to go to work, and I almost used to feel I was walking through the turnstiles, that I had like a, you know, those medieval suits. Yeah. That's the way I needed to be in order to protect myself, because, you know, I guess because it wasn't really, well, it was, I needed to be there for a certain point, but I think I didn't leave when I didn't leave. I did make several attempts after my children were born. My first child was born, I left, and my second child came and I left again. But I always kept on coming back, I think, because this is what we do. It's like, we talked about it, I think last week, like standing on the nail, right? You become comfortable with something and it's easy for you to do that thing rather than to question why you're doing it.
Right.
And I fell into this rhythm of life that was working 60, 70 hours a day, wow, traveling probably once every quarter to London or to Germany. I lost touch with my children, and I lost touch with my husband. But I was so in it that I wasn't really able to see a way out of it. And I think this is partly where my own ancestral sort of that stoic Irish, you know, you've got to do it, you've got to, you know, grit and bear it and just keep on going. And it became a very lonely place for me. It became a place where I just didn't fit in anymore. And so in 2012 is when I kind of realized that that it was a good idea for me to I guess plant the seeds. I'm a big believer in planting seeds for what we want to create, and I also believe that we direct our lives. Like, we are the ones who create it. And I had a vision of me in creating a different life. And serendipitously, I had a really, at that point, I worked for a really great guy who came into my office one day and he said, "Hey, would you like to go to Paris in spring?" I'm like, definitely. And he sent me to, it was a women's leadership program. It was a feminine leadership program led by women. It was associated with INSEAD, the university outside of, in Paris. And it was so interesting. The format of this, it was basically a retreat. And it was a retreat that was designed for women and supported by women. Something that I had never really experienced before, especially in my professional life. I had done other things outside, and it was also set on the grounds of a very ancient monastery, and there was some incredible energy there. And as soon as I got there, I felt something's about to change. And that's the other thing about transformation I wanted to talk about, is that sometimes you need to come out of your current experience in order to be able to recognize, you know, what it is that the habits that you are perpetuating, the things that you're doing that are no longer serving you. Because as humans, we won't change unless we're forced to, for the most part. You know, I think that's we're evolving in a different way now, but I think historically there was a lot, that's how we operated. So here I was in this beautiful place. Okay. Do you want to, sorry, did you ask me a question?
That just reminds me of that quote from Paula Coelho, you know, the gentleman that
yes.
was an alchemist, where he said, if you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. That will kill you faster.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so true. I love that one. I'm going to put that one down. So yeah, here I was. And the first phone call I actually made, I was back, you know, close to where I grew up. At this point, I had lost I mean, there's so many parts of the story, but I had lost my father. My father had passed after 9/11. I'd had a child and flew back to Ireland the day before 9/11. So it had been just a lot that had happened in my life. And I called my sister and I spoke to her about what was happening in my marriage, which was you know, something that I hadn't been able to share before. And it was something that, you know, my marriage was not feeling supportive emotionally. And, you know, of course, I take responsibility for my part of, you know, being the workaholic and disconnecting, but things were not good. It was only when I got there and was able to take a breath did I realize that, like, things needed to change. There was going to be a shift. I felt it. I really felt it. And so here we were in this beautiful place, and we're do all these leadership forums, and we're having these incredible discussions about, leading different cultures, and how the nature of feminine leadership was shifting. And we did this exercise, or I did this exercise with one of the coaches, and she asked me to draw a picture of myself. And the picture needed to include my heart and my head, and it needed to depict the past and the future. Okay, so I sit down to do this exercise. I probably hadn't got a crayon in my hand, or any colors in my hand for like 20 years. I was completely cut off from anything related to creativity or flowers or anything. I was just in this very male, sort of linear type mode. And so I drew this picture of this big head, and then this heart felt like it was, I couldn't even access it. I couldn't even like connect into what this heart was.
Wow.
My head was, I just wanted to draw these masks over it, and I didn't know who I was. The face, and especially in Celtic mythology or history, the face, and it's what we put out to the world. This is what we put out to the world. All of your life is written on your face, your ancestors, everything. And I couldn't, I literally was like, who am I? I had this just complete meltdown, utter, like, I don't even know who I am. My head felt like it was just so full, it was going to explode, because I was very much operating from my mind and completely disconnected from the head down. Like, I was not in touch with what my body was signaling to my head. And when I drew the past, I recognized how much there was in the past that was related to just, working and living somebody else's dream. I felt like I was living somebody else's dream, living somebody else's life, and it wasn't mine. And when I drew the future, I knew that I would not get to the future from this past. Like, if I continued in the present and guarding my heart, I put all these walls around myself. And I knew that having this career and managing my family, or being able to really participate fully in my children's lives, just wasn't working. Keith and I were like ships in the night. We'd bought a business at that point in 2008, right when the crash went, a bakery in the city, a Jewish bakery in the city, and we were both very distressed out, and it wasn't a good situation at home. So I recognized that if I wanted to change my future, I needed to do something different. It's like back to that Einstein quote that you often remind me of, which is, if we want to create something, the same line of thinking, I don't remember exactly the quote.
Can't solve a problem using the same mindset that created the problem.
There we go. And the definition of insanity is keep on doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Yeah. So I had tried a million different ways to try and figure this out. And at that point, in this beautiful place, it just hit me that the possibility, that there was a different life that I could create, there was hope. All of a sudden there was hope. One of the women who led the program, her name was Armenia Ibarra. She's a Cuban woman, fabulous woman. And she wrote a book called Working Identities. And she gave us all a signed copy as we were leaving. And I had felt that trip, I had felt so supported in a way that I hadn't ever before. I had allowed myself to be myself. I wasn't pretending to be somebody else. I wasn't
wearing the masks.
I wasn't wearing the masks, exactly. The masks came off. And I felt a huge shift and a sense of relief, and the timing was so perfect. I read the book on the way back from Paris. I literally finished it by the time I got back. And I had met a woman, she was this really, I don't remember her name, but she's written a few books about the art of negotiation. And she also had, had provided us with a lecture. And she directed me, or she used to sit with me every day at dinner, and she kind of, she was teasing out of me what it is that I would like to do. And so one of the things that I had done a lot of on Wall Street was to be a mentor to women. My door was always open. I guess I was the den mother, or I was the woman that everybody came to, the men included, but especially the women. And so she said, she planted a seed in my head about becoming a coach. And I had no idea how that would happen, but she said she'd hook me up with this friend of hers who was at Columbia Teachers College, and she had an executive coaching course. So I returned back, and I think that following year, I made space and room in my life to be able to take the course, which I did, which was huge for me, because it also helped me really connect in with feeling like I was serving these women, and I had the skills to do it, because I was always afraid that I was, you want to kind of have that training.
Right.
And that led me, the role I was at that point, I was the COO of finance in the Americas. And so I had a lot of, I could shape a lot of the people, the process, and the technology that our department was, involved in. We really worked, we were the infrastructure of the bank. So we were like the spine. And so I had a lot of ability to direct resources towards things that I cared about. And so I really connected in with our corporate social responsibility division. And I was responsible for hiring and also retaining people and cultivating that loyalty that we didn't find as much, right? And so we did many things like Habitat and Humanity. We planted 1 million trees at Bloomberg. We went up to it's the largest food bank in the Bronx. Can't remember the name of it. So I was lucky enough that I had the leeway to be able to satisfy my soul, because who I am is somebody who wants to support other people in feeling good, in feeling, in feeling like they belong, in feeling like they can achieve anything, that they can dream, right? That they can dream. And so that really was feeding my soul. And I think, if it hadn't been for that, I probably, I would have, well, it doesn't matter. That was what was important. And so, and I guess the point about that is that no matter where you are in life, no matter what job you have, you can always find ways to satisfy the part of you that has come here, the reason that you've come here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. All that matters is that you're true to yourself and that you figure out a way to make it work for you.
Right. And I think that is a really important message, because I think that where people get stuck is that they think they do get stuck in the economic situation, and they do get stuck in the idea that, well, if I leave this now, what is this? How can I support my family? How can we live in this place? How, there's all the stress and worry, and the stress and worry just makes you sicker. Exactly. And part of the problem that I hear from people is, well, what do I do next? Where do I go? So when you are able to work with somebody like you, who can guide people into finding what is your goal, what do you want, and that really is a hard journey. It really, I don't know that people realize that it's the first step is that inner journey. Like when you were talking about drawing the picture and seeing, that's how I see myself. No, I can't live in a world like this. Everybody should go out and do that right now, by the way. That's a great exercise. But to make that inner journey, to discover what it is you truly want to be. And if you are unhappy all the time, if you don't recognize yourself anymore, you've got to somewhere find the courage to do that, because otherwise that's what you're bringing to the world.
Exactly.
So that's the whole idea of be the change you wish to see in the world. If you're miserable and unhappy and not changing, you're not going to bring change. And if you do, the change is going to be as miserable and unhappy as you are.
100%. 100%.
What motivated you to leave, and looking at all this, motivated you to leave Wall Street and become the Kundalini yoga person that you are now?
Well, you know, I knew that I think what motivated me most, one of the things that we did as an organization is we supported a school system called the Young Women's Leadership Network. It's a 5 schools across the 5 boroughs, Queens and the Bronx and Harlem. And I remember one morning, I took the morning off to go to an event. It was called Cool Women, Hot Jobs. And it was basically for us to go and mentor these young women who the results of these schools are phenomenal. I think 96% of them end up in university, and they have incredible circumstances that they overcome to do that. And I remember walking out of there feeling like I was skipping, feeling like I was walking on air, feeling like, I felt more satisfaction and more connection to who the hell I am and more joy than I had in 20 years before, like literally. And I don't even vaguely, it was like I flew back down to Wall Street. It was like so incredibly uplifting. And so that was my motivation, was knowing that there was a bigger purpose for me. And the other big one, which is a more personal one, which I don't talk about it as much, was that my marriage ended at that point. My marriage came to an end, right? And one would say that was the worst time ever to even think about giving up. I had a very comfortable life. I had a very good salary, a very good bonus structure, but it was somehow I had convinced myself that it was my responsibility to continue to serve in that way in the marriage. And what I recognized was that I actually had a choice. I gave away my power. I gave away my power of choice. And as we were separating, I recognized that I did have power and I could take that back and I could create that life. Because honestly, not being with my children, and also now were going through this process, that Keith and I decided that it was so important for us to put the kids first. We did a mediation, and again, this is a point. At every step, each one of those transitions or each one of those changes that came in my life, I sat down and wrote down what I wanted to create in my life. So,
stop right there.
Yes.
Repeat that statement go ahead.
At each one of those stages, right back to 2012, I wrote down, this is how, as if it was already here. This is what I want to create in my life. At that point, it was in this post-paradigm divorce. I want, to create harmony, peace, and love in my family. I want each one of us to have each other's backs. I want Keith and I to be better parents than we were beforehand. And I wrote it down like as if it was already happened. And I had to then let it go, right? because when you hold on too tightly to that, but I thought about it every day. I knew what I wanted to create. And I was lucky enough. I mean, listen, I can't even tell you the amount of people in my life that supported me and us, and I was very intentional about and grounded in that intentional. And so if I went off track, it was easy for me to see where I was not living because I'm a big one. If you don't walk your walk, then what's the point?
Integrity.
Yes.
What's the point? There's a lot of people saying a lot of sentences and they're just sentences.
Yes.
And you want it to be the action. So
yes.
I'm going to repeat again that a lot of people feel like they want to change, that they're unhappy, but they don't sit and take the time to identify, what is it? Why do I have this feeling? Where do I need to go from here? And it takes time. I do think you have to be patient with yourself. I mean,
Oh my God.
in reality, I don't feel like I came into being the real me until I turned 60. I mean, everything had been up to then, you know, helped get me to where I needed to go, and certainly informs who I am today. But I don't think I really took charge and claimed who I am and who I wanted to be until I was 60 years old. And I'm 66, nearly 67. And once you make that claim, once you even just start to look, it just balloons. It becomes bigger and better and bigger and better all of the time. And so the concern, I you know, I love you, but I love so much that you are of service, that you take these experiences and you share them with young women and you share them with young people so that they can benefit from your experience. Because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening out there right now thinking, what do you mean you left like this high-powered job on Wall Street making lots and lots of money? There are going to be people that can't understand that, but there are people who are in your old position, who are sitting there thinking about, how do I get out of here?
100%. Yeah. No. Well, first of all, just your point. The first thing is, it's not, you know, first, the process is not linear. The process is a circular process. You start, you plant the seed. It's like, just like the cycle of life, like just like you know, this beautiful natural cycle we have with Mother Nature. You plant the seed. You may not see the flower, the blossom, the fruit of that seed for years. I mean, in some cases, that's the way it is. I'm experiencing now some of the seeds that I planted, and you know, and hadn't give up on, but did take me to dark places because they didn't actually materialize. I'm recognizing why that happened or where I was with that. So everything is circular. There is a divine plan to everything. I mean, I fully believe there's something greater than me that's guiding me all of the time. It doesn't mean that I feel it in the moment. I also think it's like life is here to be experienced. We are here to have every experience that is. And the more experience, whether they be, and I don't judge experiences, whether they're good or bad or evil or good, whatever. Every experience teaches you something about yourself. Every relationship, whether it's, you know, whether it's an abusive relationship or whether it's a loving relationship, teaches you something. And if you're willing to always look at to what am I being shown? Because what is dis-ease? Dis-ease is where we're out of alignment with our purpose, with who we are. And the signs of that show up everywhere. And it's very, you know, it's easy. And I've done it. Like I'm not perfect, but it's easy to just ignore that and distract yourself with whatever it might be is your distraction. But, you know, the joy of actually following those threads and following those messages or clues, right, like breadcrumbs, is that it will bring you to the life that you came here to lead. Yes. I believe that everybody is unique, and compare. You know, I think if you compare, you lose. And so you really need to just spend the time to listen. Like when I got out of Wall Street, I'm not even kidding, I didn't know the name of a flower. I mean, I remember going into Central Park one day and like I was feeling like this freedom, like people have a life during the day. Like, what's going on? I didn't know what that was. And I was disconnected not only from my own body, from the earth's body, and the joy of kind of, I call it like going from black and white to living in color, right? So you're living this sort of low grade, you know, and nothing's bad and nothing's good, but you've convinced yourself that you can do it. And then all of a sudden, you know, and usually something happens that forces it, right? In me, I guess the relationship with my ex, you know, that coming to head forced it and forced me to reevaluate my life. And, you know, my family, even my kids still, they're not really that happy that I left. You know, they kind of, it was a hard time for them to adjust to see me. I mean, they really are, but like, they will make fun of me, you know, because they saw me wearing these suits, being this higher powered woman who was like, you know, burning incense and, you know, cooking kale. I don't know. So you have to also realize that the people closest to you will not support you. Probably they will not support you. And you have to go on regardless. And I think what it is once you connect within that to that fire in your belly, to that person that you are, there actually is no stopping it. If you take the first step, and it's not about, I don't even think it's about, I don't think, I never thought of it about, I thought of it, or I guess what I understand now is that it's not about this being, having this high, lofty spiritual goal. It's really about being willing to live in every moment and to notice the very small things. My father used to say that the best things in life are free, and the very small moments are what people will remember you by, and the very small moments are, when you add them up, or is what your life is, your legacy. So quite often we get lost in this, and I'm guilty of it for sure, this wishful thinking, this delusional thinking, this, but it's where you will find the most pleasure is in this moment. Where you will find no suffering is in this moment, if you can land yourself in it. And in a world where we have information coming at us a mile a minute, and it takes a decision and an action to carve out that time for you.
Yes.
Right?
Right. That is so important. I took a course yesterday on setting goals and doing, working towards things that you want. And one of the things we talked about in the course was distraction. People will say, I don't have enough time. And the gentleman leading the course, Justin Kappen, said, okay, so how long are you spending on your cell phone? How many hours are you on Facebook? How much news are you watching? So when you're telling yourself, when you don't have the time, but you're distracted by other things, at some point you have to take responsibility, which we talked about earlier. You have to take responsibility and say, I am distracting myself from what I need to be doing right now. If I want to be of service to the world, if I want to, whatever your goal is, I'm not telling you what your goal should be. I would never do that. But I mean, whatever it is, you have got to commit to that, take responsibility for it, and then you've got to carve out the time. You've just got to. There's no other way to do it.
That's it. And that time you invest in yourself is more valuable than anything else that you will do. And it really is, back to your earlier point, is about you being the change that you want to see. I did a transformation. I was lucky enough that I came upon this course as I was leaving Wall Street, like in those last few months. And it was a 2 weekends and then a 90-day journey. And it was intense, and it was 6 o'clock phone calls every morning. And literally, you got to look at your life under a microscope, but you got to do it in this lab of life, if you like. And so we came together as a team. And that's the other point I want to make, is that nobody can make this journey on their own.
No.
Nobody. Like the communities that I found, the communities that, Louisa, obviously, and our Sacred Circle. I was part of a 2-year energy program. You and Bob's and the communities that I have found, I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. This is not a journey that you take on your own. It's an inward journey, and you are alone, right? But you have to be able to have other people to be able to share your experiences with, so that you understand that what you're going through, because there are times when it will not be easy. There were times where you will not be able to see the light. You will not be able to see, especially with, things like divorce and changing jobs and taking those risks. I had to just completely let go.
Yeah.
An illness too. Yes. And you have to completely let go that it's that of control, right? You have to let go
you
of
do.
Control.
And you have to realize that we are interdependent. This is not a world of independence. It is a world, and we should create a world where everybody feels free to make these choices. But, like has been said over and over and over again, with great freedom comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Just because you as an individual get to be free to develop yourself, you have to recognize that development happens in an interdependent relationship with people in your life. So when you had to go and explain to your kids, okay, mom's making a gigantic change, and you have to be committed to dealing with the resistance, to knowing that There are going to be people in your life that think you've gone insane.
Yeah,
and
we did.
don't want to talk to you, don't want to have things to do with you. You will lose people along the way, but
Absolutely.
you will gain the most fantastic, supportive new family, like you were talking about, that
Yes.
you can't even imagine
Exactly.
what you gain from this.
I call it your soul family, you know, your soul family. And, you know, and I was lucky in the sense that I had huge support from my family at home. I think my daughter's coming in, speaking of family. I had huge support from my family in Ireland throughout it. So that was something that not everybody has. And even though that they weren't physically here, my sister was a complete stand for me. And, you know, that transformation program that I did, I had so many people who were, and I think this is an important point too, about standing for what it is. What do you stand for? Like if everybody gets off this phone call and asks themselves, right today, what do I stand for in the world? What is it that people, you know, that I'm willing to put my ass on the line for? What is, you know, what is it that I'm willing to become in order to change what I'm seeing around me that is no longer feeling good, you know, like what do you stand for? And I think that without having that, life doesn't feel as fulfilling, life doesn't feel as vibrant and alive, because you, in order to get up every morning, and I definitely woke up many mornings like not wanting to get out of bed, but when you have that passion to get out of bed, when you have that passion to be able to know that what you do and what everybody does, and you know, this is true for all of us, we make a difference in people's lives simply by showing up and smiling at them,
Yes.
simply by being kind to them, simply by being willing to listen to somebody who's got, you know, who's going through troubles. Like it's not, there's, we talk about heroes, but I believe everybody is a superhero. Everybody on this planet to be here at this time of this huge, incredible change. We all are superheroes, and we all can support each other and recognize that, again, it comes back to these small actions that you take on a daily basis. I do an exercise called Be, Do, Have every day. And I ground into, okay, who am I going to be today in order to be able to create what I want to have? So I say I'm going to be loving, open, caring. And then these are the 3 things I'm going to do no matter what, because we all get distracted. This is great. But these things need to happen. And these are things that will progress my life, right? And then what if I do them, what will I have? I'll have peace of mind. I'll have prosperity. I'll have joy. I'll have harmony. And so again, a simple exercise. You don't have to sit on your mat for 2 hours. I mean, I've done that, but you don't have to do that. It's literally these small things. You know, breath is huge in order to be able to connect in with, you know, that voice, because it's about connecting into the voice that's guiding you. And we all have that small voice, no matter who you are. And we all know when we're ignoring it, right? We have this nagging feeling, and then that drags our energy down, and we don't have as much zest for life. And then we go down further that path. But it's about simply setting the intention, grounding in the intention, and then the action just comes from there.
Yes.
And before you know it, you're on this path, and it builds momentum. And it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. In my case, you know, there was definitely a time where I went through a period of like everything I tried didn't work. I opened the studio in my house that you beautifully blessed for me. I couldn't attract people to it, but I had to say, okay, this is not working. Let me change, you know, let me either decide that I'm going to do this, or let me pivot, let me do something else. And you have to be willing to try. And that was the great thing about the book, Working Identity. She had this unconventional way of looking at our careers and who we are in the world. And a lot of it was about just test it out. Just test out.
Yep.
This is my daughter. It's okay, baby. She's like, just test it out. And
come on.
You want to come and say hi? No, she's like, but it's like, yeah, it's just
going to embarrass you. That's what moms are for.
Moms are here to embarrass you. Yes, come say hi.
No, really. Hi.
So it's kind of like one of my old bosses used to say, Mitch, throw in spaghetti at the wall, right? Just throw the spaghetti, sees what stick, and don't be like Anaïs Nin, I think, says it, that you don't be afraid of failing. Like failure is your first attempt at learning. You know, FAIL, first attempt at learning. So failure is what teaches us the most. It's been when I've had my head face down in the sand where I didn't know there was a way out, and that I learned the most. And I think we have a culture that has set these ridiculous standards, and we set them, for me, I set them for myself. And honestly, I was like, is that going to really bring me joy? Like if I hit that, right? And that's the other thing we do. We set things and we see things, if I have this, then I'll be happy. If
Right.
you can't be happy where you are, you'll never be happy in the future.
Mm-mm.
I say you take yourself wherever you go, right? And so many of us think that by changing something, and that's why not everybody has to leave their job like I did. I was pretty radical. That's kind of who I am. But you can, I think you do, and I guess I left it at a time when I was satisfied with it. I had spent the last 2 years, I kind of was beginning to do it on my terms. I started to be able to figure out how to manage it and to set the boundaries. And so I think that's another thing about change. Change is not about resisting something or thinking that what you already are doing is not good. It's really about recognizing there's something better, there's something bigger that's calling you than this. Because when you change from a place of resistance, you're met with equal and opposite resistance back. What you resist persists.
Persists, right?
But when you, and this is the great thing about humans, especially women, and that's where my passion lies mostly, but we are such creative beings that we can dream in and imagine in and vision into something that does not have to do anything with our past.
Right.
Like our past is important, that we learn from it. We need to honor it. We need to honor all the struggles and understand it. But we don't have to limit ourselves from our past.
And
right?
I think that is the mindset and heart set. I think now we're actually more in a place of flipping the heart and the mind,
100%.
where the decisions we're making to make the planet a more beautiful place for humans, for everything that shares the planet with us, is we've got to go into our heart. And,
yes.
And it's going to be our hearts that tell us what our next step is. And so that idea that we are talking about a huge, radical, scary change in the way most of us, at least in the Western world, have been trained to think.
Yes.
So I have to read this quote from Lame Deer, Seeker of Visions. And I read these quotes from Native America, or I talk to people about things I've learned from my friends and family, like Melissa Goodblanket, who's watching, because there have been cultures that have existed on this planet for thousands of years that see the world differently, and they were successful and have survived genocide. Have survived unbelievable atrocities and injustices, and survived because of the power of this belief. And I just love this quote from Lame Deer. I was like many other full-bloods. I didn't want a steady job in an office or factory. I thought myself too good for that. Not because I was stuck up, but simply because any human being is too good for that no life. So we're not saying that you can't be happy in your factory job. We're not saying that you can't be happy in your office job. Like you just said, you can find the happiness. You can find the place where it brings you joy and gives you the things you need in this moment.
Yes.
But also it's important to know, for people to know, that there are other ways of looking at the world. Exactly. And successful ways. And then you have to define your own success. You have to decide what success means for you. If success means you get to spend more time with your kids, then you have to get there. If success means you spend less time with your kids, then you have to get there. Whatever it means for you is good. There is if there's anything we're doing right now, it's breaking down the idea that success has one definition that depends on how many houses you have and how many cars you have and which job you have. And you said something earlier that I don't want to just let go off, is comparing yourself to others is death.
Yes.
And you'll never find who you are if you are constantly comparing yourself. Emmer Jennings, I hope I'm saying your name right. Emmer Jennings Kirwan said, Paula, you are inspirational. And you
Aw, that's my sister.
and she's right. You're right.
She inspires me hugely. And that's been one of the gifts. So, you know, I went from somebody who literally did not, you know, had sort of a, was so wrapped up in what I was working on and that I had let these important relationships in my life, you know, like I wasn't in truth with them. And one of the biggest gifts, because somebody said to me, what's the price you're paying for having left that job? It was like a coach I had about a year ago. And I'm like, I don't look at it that way. I look, what is it that I have? There isn't, because he wanted to know the monetary price. Like, what was it? And I was like, no, what I have gotten is priceless. I've built and deepened into relationships with my family, with, you know, my soul family, with, you know, which is where the fulfillment of life is. People don't say when we heard this, when you die, you know, oh, she was great. She worked her whole life.
Right.
They say, you know, and so all of the moments I've had and created space for by being willing to step away from something that was comfortable, that, you know, was successful. And I think, you know, all of those moments, I couldn't put a price on them. I couldn't put a monetary price on them.
And I think you said something earlier too that's important for people. We talked about this in when I took this course on called The Art of Dying. And one of the things that we should all be doing, not on our deathbeds.
No.
You should be saying to yourself, what is my legacy? What do I want my life to have meant here on earth?
Yes.
What is, and you can't answer the meaning of life. This is like a big question. You know, we can't answer what is the meaning of life. You can only answer what is the meaning of my life.
Exactly.
So if you ask yourself that question, start from the end and go back. How do I want people to remember me? What am I leaving behind for my children and my grandchildren and the world in general, my community?
Exactly.
You know, and how do I want that to look? So Miss Paula, we've got like 3 minutes. So give us your last few words, Miss Inspiration.
You know, ultimately this journey is about building a loving relationship with yourself and being willing to spend time with yourself to bring back home. I believe we're all whole and we've forgotten who we are, and we forget and we remember. When you spend time with yourself, whether it's in nature with you know, connecting with you start to see the parts of yourself. Be compassionate with all of the parts of yourself, because bringing them home and remembering who you are really ultimately creates the safety from within that allows you then to be able to take those steps forward. If you don't have that safety, that groundedness, that dream, you know, that's built off of your heart, I guess take time to get to know yourself. Take time. Socrates says an unexamined life is not worth living.
Right. And Janine Mansell, another wonderful woman, teacher, connector, friend, says embodiment. And that's what you're talking about. That's what you're talking about now, embodiment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is the key word. So I want to thank you so much for being on. It went so fast.
I know, it was like a minute.
I know, really. That's because we're in the here and now. We were in the moment. So thank you, everybody who's listening. Thank you, Bobby Lacera, for the wonderful Strong Island Entertainment Group and the wonderful Strong Island Radio. Without you, we couldn't even do these things. For living your dream and living your truth. Because, again, it creates that community. And it creates a place where everybody can use their voice and speak their truth. So thank you all for listening. And as always, I wish you peace, love, and unity within yourself and outside of yourself. But go in there first. Thanks, Paula. Love you.
Thank you, Maddi. I love you. Thank you, Bobby. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.